Welcome to the hyperbolic game developing chamber. This is a chamber designed to pump out not talking quality here, pure quantity, sheer number of quantity. So watch out, Big Gaming. Big Gaming Co. Okay, this little indie is coming. So basically, the chamber is designed to pump out just imagine, Henry Ford's McDonald's assembly line of sandwiches, except it's games and we're just stamping them out. The workers are zonked out. They want to die, and I'm the workers, and I'm also Henry Ford, and we're just pumping out these games. So that is going to be the ideal goal. So yesterday we had a good starting point. It was about an hour of work. It left a lot to be desired, but I haven't made a 2D game and play Canvas yet, so a lot of nonsense was going on. But hopefully we can make some more progress today, and this game is going to be an absolute hit. So that is going to be the goal. So we're going to do some more stuff today, and yeah, we got some stuff set up. So I can do a quick walkthrough, I believe. Actually, let me just do something really quick. So, quick walkthrough. This is the game. So, there's not a lot going on here. I mean, there's literally nothing going on, actually. So, we have I can't see. Yeah, we can't see anything at all, right? And we just have some text that pops up in the console, just letting us know that our event is working. Our events are working. So, the game is basically going to be a typing-based game, and it's going to have tons of political memes, pop culture references, and just fun goofs and gaffs for the family. So I looked at the App Store, and I'm gonna be honest, it's an absolute mess. So I'm just gonna throw everything I have into a pot, mix it up, and send it to Apple, and then I guess we'll wait for step 3, which should hopefully be profit, or it could be a ban, but we'll find out. But yeah, so we're just gonna jump into it, I guess. So we're just gonna do another hour today. And yeah, that would be the typing goal. So today, that is definitely the goal. I'm actually, what would be today's goal? Today's goal, maybe if we could set up the tree data structure, the try data structure, and when you type, maybe, yeah, we'll have 12 buckets, and we'll assign a bucket to an enemy. Yeah, we'll need some good abstractions now that I'm thinking about it. Well, the good part about OOP is that it helps you structure things. The bad part about object-oriented programming is that you have to think about it. So that's not very flames. Let me sit here and think for a second. So we have some OOP action. Basically, it would be better if I had some kind of thing I could draw on. Actually, let me see. Draw online. Basically, I would like it so that you can have this guy here, and you'll have some things here. It's going to have some text. This text is going to say text, and yeah, this is what we would have. The issue, though, is that when you type, you're going to have only a specific possible amount. You can only have at most have 26 enemies on the screen. Maybe 52 if we allow casing. We'll say 26. Now, if you type something, it has to be able to fit into one of these uniquely identifiable boxes that have to start with different letters. The problem being that how would you structure this? You could have something like an enemy manager, which would manage all these enemies. Maybe the enemy manager would receive events. Maybe the enemy manager would know about these things. When you type, you'd receive we could send this to something like a lot of managers. Maybe it's a lot like real life. We'd have something like the word manager. Okay. Type a key, goes to the word manager, and ideally, the word manager would let this thing know that one of the enemies have taken damage. I think the issue, though, I think I read a book about this. I'm trying to make the abstractions match the game. That doesn't make any sense. Word manager would have the try in it. But someone has to hold the mapping of the enemies. Maybe the word manager should just hold buckets of words. It shouldn't even matter where they're going. And this, we can have a bucket ID. And then each enemy and the enemy manager will just have a bucket ID. You'd have a bucket ID. Then the word manager could tell the enemy manager, hey, this bucket maybe it would be really general. We could have a bunch of events, right? Whenever a bucket, a character is touched, right? And stuff like that. So we could have events for buckets. So, this is not the worst thing I've ever seen. So events for buckets. Word manager has buckets. Whenever something happens to a bucket, and someone can subscribe to a bucket. So, all in all, the word manager would manage buckets, and then the enemy manager, maybe it could subscribe to receive bucket talk. Subscribe to receive bucket talk from the enemy manager. Then from there, the enemy manager could abstract the relationship between the word manager and the enemy. So I think this could work, but I think this could work. We already have this being right. We don't actually even need this is mobile part anymore because all this is just going to come out as regular input that a key was pressed. Oh no, this is on the on part. I'm trolling. I don't know if we need a method for this, but maybe we'll just keep it there anyway. And we'll just fire. This would be input key pressed, right? And the key that was pressed will be along. Will go along for the message. And you know what? We'll just rename this dummy state manager into something like bucket manager. So I think this could work. And app that on input, right? When a key is pressed, right, we'll receive a callback with the key that was pressed, right? And we'll probably want to respond to it, right? Or we'll just call it handle key, right? And we'll pass in this, and we'll declare a method. Type dot handle key. So hopefully this works. So we should see the same thing in the console basically. So I don't see anything in the console. Might be because we need to really re-click play. No, okay, so that is definitely not why. Let me check what the event was called. Input : key pressed. Right, we don't want to make the same mistake we made last time. We have to add our script to the scene. Maybe we'll just have a manager's thing. Now I think if we reload the page, right, so we're getting all the things now. So if we go to the bucket manager, say bucket manager max buckets is going to be equal to utils dot valid keys dot length. Buckets. When we say a bucket, what do we mean? It's a bucket of words. Is it a bucket of words? It's a word that you can type. No, it's a place where you can receive a place where you can receive something to type. It's a container that holds a typable thing. It holds a typable thing. If it holds a typable thing, bucket manager prototype of buckets. It would hold a typable thing. What does it mean to be typable? You also have to think about how you people would subscribe to events. They would subscribe to events for a particular bucket, or they would just say, I'd like to respond to events from this bucket. Then we would send events on that bucket. Send scoped on that bucket ID. Interested in said bucket. For a bucket to exist, it must have something typable within it, maybe some kind of bucket object. If we had a bucket object, if we had an array of bucket objects, and you receive a key, it'd be pretty easy to know which bucket it goes to because only 26 possible buckets. If it goes into said bucket, then we could just call receive for that bucket, and then that bucket would decide to send out that. Bucket.prototype. How do you even use new? I mean, with proto. Let me see. Use JavaScript proto. JavaScript, all functions have a property named prototype. When you call a function as a constructor, this property is set as the prototype of the newly constructed object. So if we set the prototype of a constructor, I see, so we should use functional. I see. So maybe we meant to say here instead is function bucket. And you know, it won't take anything to start, but it's just gonna have wait a second. I think it says that, but Play Canvas does not support that. Then we could have something like this dot say ID equals function, or we just say alert. So I'm gonna say buckets dot push new bucket. At the end, I'm gonna say buckets sub 0 dot say ID. Okay, so actually, okay, maybe this works. That works. So maybe we'll just use some functional classes. So I'll have an ID. And yeah, it'll take an ID to start. But actually, its ID is its position in the array. So, you know, we'll just deal with that. And we'll change alert to console.log. Okay, so this actually does work pretty well. So we'll delete the bucket there. 26 buckets. Based on the key received, we'll know we can pipe a key to a specific bucket. Actually, no. If we pipe it to a specific bucket, that doesn't quite make any sense. When we receive input, we don't want all of them to receive it. Like any bucket would receive input, but the bucket manager would make sure that only a specific bucket receives that input. bucket at and then then when we handle a key, we can do some work to figure out which bucket should be focused. Okay. And then I'd like to give every bucket, just for now, for testing, a starting word. I'd like that starting string to be string.from car code A. Actually, we can just make it, I think 64 is A, and we'll do plus I. They all say undefined. I said string.from car code. Right, be 64 plus I. Oh no, I want to say b.current word. Right, so we actually get an @ sign. A starts at 65. Okay, so this actually looks fine. And it seems to be palatable. Now, when you're focused on a now, when they push a key, right, the logic is going to depend on if this dot focused you can say bucket manager dot prototype, make it equal to a function. This function will just return if this dot focused bucket ID does not equal -1. Okay, then we can say this dot is, or it might be better actually, focused is a strange. We'll just say selected bucket ID. And then we can change this function to is bucket selected. Then we'll say if is bucket selected, right? And then otherwise, we'll just print select a bucket. Perfect. Okay, we're back. So now we can select a bucket. And the goal here would just be to select a bucket based on the key they pushed. So to figure out the bud they would select, I think it would just literally be this dot selected bucket ID based on the key, right? So we'd say const uppercase key. We probably don't even need to store this in a variable. If we say this dot bucket sub key dot to uppercase, right, and we subtract, say string key dot to uppercase car code at, and subtract it from 65, we should get a bucket. And then we can just say if potential bucket dot if it can receive the key, then we'll say this dot selected bucket ID is equal to potential bucket dot ID. We'll say can receive key is going to be equal to a function if the key matches the first character the current word. So return this dot current word sub 0, right? Safe navigation equals key, but the key that we use is not going to be the uppercase key, because we only use the uppercase key to figure out what bucket we should be allowed to select. I'm realizing now we actually want to swap these. We can just say this dot selected bucket ID and then can't read properties of undefined. Let me try it again. It must have been a mistake. Bucket manager 40. This dot buckets of 65 minus key dot to uppercase. Oh my god, I just realized we want to do key that to uppercase dot car code at 0 minus 65 instead. And we have to make this dot buckets. Couldn't receive key. That is strange. So every bucket should have the current word in it. If you can receive the key, you return this dot current word sub 0 is equal to key. So we can just say this dot current word, right, and key. Oh, I see. So we had all, yeah, I see. So the bucket that we have, okay, now we have a bucket selected. Okay. So yeah, this is actually fine. So we can just say couldn't receive key. Okay. We haven't have anything visual yet, but once we get the rest going, I think it should just be pretty simple from here. Let me check the dot. Let me check the schematics. The word manager. This has changed. Bucket manager. It has buckets. So if it can receive the key, right, then we'll just say this. I will say potential bucket handle key, and I'll pass in the key, right? And when you have a bucket selected, we'll also just pass it up here. We'll just say this dot bucket sub this dot selected bucket ID. Dot handle key. This will equal a function which will also take a key, and yeah, it's gonna just call if this dot can receive key. And I think it's literally just going to say this dot current word is equal to this dot current word dot substring 1. Right, so we want to remove the first character and go to the end. And we can also have another function return this dot current. Right, and then down here, this looks a little messy, but I think we can just say if this dot selected bucket you would go back to -1. Then we'd have some basic kind of logic already working. We don't have to call this bucket empty since this is a bucket. Oh, and we need, yeah, we are handling the key. So let me just do a quick test. If we type the one letter character, bucket selected should be 5. I'll just print here. So we have bucket selected 3. So that is actually a problem. You do the bucket selected. Oh, we can receive the key. So the bucket, then we need to handle the key. Bucket would be empty. Bucket selected, the selected bucket would now be -1. Oh, this is confusing. If I hit capital R, I think this would actually be easier to follow if I... Yeah, I think I made this more complicated because there's like 4 things I'm following here. If the bucket is selected, then basically nothing to do. It's if the bucket isn't selected, and we can receive it. Now we have the bucket selected, and we can remove this whole else thing. We don't need this, we don't need this. After all that, if the bucket is still selected, if there is a selected bucket, then we can just say set bucket sub. Then we have the potential to handle the key, and if the bucket is empty after handling the key, then we want to set this dot selected bucket ID back to -1, and it would be empty now. I think this makes more sense. And then we'll pretty much grab all of these. Selected bucket. And then I think if we refresh the page, maybe this makes sense. So we have a new bucket selected, which would be 3. The bucket's now empty. If you push D again, nothing happens. Right, which basically means I think we're good. I don't think we have any unpushed keys. Right, and so that actually is much better. So yeah, that is much better. All right. So now we're no longer receiving the bucket is empty, which is good. Because you can load them up with nonsense, and we can actually keep moving. So when we load them up with words to start, load them up with some move this to basic, change this to actual words later on. We're going to pass in a letter, and it's just going to return a bunch of those letters. Move this when we get real data for buckets. So, you know what? We'll take that. And real buckets. The next time we come back, I'd like to remove this when we get real data for buckets. Move this when we get real data for buckets. The next thing to do is to follow the schematics. Follow the schematics, and what was the other thing? Prototype. Simple enemy mapping. And then propagate events. Bucket should propagate events outwards. Propagate scoped events to the app. Spawn to. And I think that is where we'll stop for today.